Welcome to Garden of the Spirit, a class studying apples from the orchard for the second time, beginning after Pesach 2014. This class meets in Long Meadow, Massachusetts, the center of the universe, and is held in memory of Malka Ruth Bas Moshe, Margaret Vogel, blessed memory. Apples from the Orchard contains selections of teachings of Kabbalah from the Arizal, Rabbi Yitzchak Luria, based on the weekly Torah portions, translated and explained by Rabbi Moshe Wisniewski. This week, welcome everybody. This week we're going to be on the same topic as last week about Moshe and Yitro being reincarnations of Hevel and Cain, and they are going to continue the saga where Cain killed Hevel. Although between them it was on a positive note. Last week we learned about the last chapter. We had that Cain, his three parts of his soul went into the Egyptian killed by Moshe, the Yitro, Moshe's father-in-law, and Korach, who led a mutiny against Moshe. And Yitro was the only one who reacted in a conciliatory manner. So we're going to begin page 371. When Moshe first went to Egypt to confront Paro, he brought his family with him, including his second son, who had his Brit Milah on the way. Aaron, Moshe's brother, told Moshe there was no reason to bring his family into the suffering of Egypt, and they would be better off going back to Yitro, father-in-law of Moshe. After Israel left Egypt and they crossed the Red Sea, Yitro brought Moshe's wife and children to the Israel camp in the desert. Alan,
to ego versus self
negation.
Abnegation.
Yeah,
Abnegation. Yitro, the father-in-law of Moshe, took Zipporah, Moshe's wife, after he had sent her back to him, as well as her two sons. The first one's name was being Gershom, and the other one's name being Eliezer. Now Yitro and Moshe's sons and wife came to Moshe to the desert wherein he was encamped at the mountain of Hashem. When Moshe originally returned to Mitzrayim after marrying Yisro's daughter Zipporah, he had planned on taking her and their two sons with him. Aaron met them on the way, however, and convinced Moshe to leave his wife and sons with Yitro.
okay, thanks very much. So just incidentally or tangentially, Moshe's son was Gershom, ending with an M, and
Joseph.
the son of Levi was Gershon, ending with an N. Or two different names. Today, commonly, most people are called Gershon, ending with an N. Yeah, but like some people, I forgot who I was talking to, and like I don't think realize the difference. Then, and the same thing with the second son, Eliezer. We said last week that Moshe's son of Moshe was Eliezer. The servant of Abraham was Eliezer. The son of Aaron was El-Azar. Two different names. If you're learning Gemara, you should take note and make sure if you're reading about Rabbi Eliezer or Rabbi El-Azar. Different people in the Gemara. Number two, Cain and Hevel are both associated with intellect. Okay, you guys got to focus on this one. It's a little, I rewrote it. Hopefully it's easier. Cain and Hevel are both associated with intellect. Cain is associated with Ima, Bina, and Hevel is associated with Abba, or Chachma. Each of them personified the Yesod of their respective Sphira. So Cain is Yesod of Bina, and Hevel is Yesod of Chachma. And both levels, but that's not it. Both levels are as they are concealed within Ze'er Anpin before they are revealed. So Ze'er Anpin are the midos, the emotions, and but it's not in a revealed way. It's the Kayin is Yesod of Bina in Ze'er Anpin, and Hevel is Yesod of Chachma in Ze'er Anpin. In this chapter, what you really got to remember is the main thing is that Hevel is the higher level of Chachma, and Kayin is the lower level of Bina. And we're talking about Yesod within each one. Go ahead.
It is necessary to know that Cain and Abel personified aspects of the two Yesods of Abba and Ima, as they are manifest within Ze'er Anpin. Cain derived from the Yesod of Ima, concealed within Ze'er Anpin, while Havel derived from the Yesod of Abba, concealed within Ze'er Anpin, before it becomes revealed further down. Yesod is the drive for self-actualization that the preceding Sephiros assume that as they are about to be transmitted to the next parts of, and thus fulfilled. Specifically, both Sephiros of the intellect, Abba, Chachma, insight, and Ima, Bina, understanding, possess their individual Yesods, which enter and nurture the development of the parts of the emotions, Ze'er Anpin.
Or in English, that the intellect, both Chachma and Bina, have an impact and influence our emotions. Okay, any questions? No, okay, good. 3. Hashem's name, Ekyeh, as Aleph, Hey, Yud, Hey, equals 21. We've had this name a number of times, and we find it in the Torah when Moshe stood at the burning bush and asked Hashem to tell him his name. So Hashem said, "I will be what I will be," Eki, and he used the name Ekyeh. In expanded spelling, where the Hey is, and we talked about expanded spelling, there are different ways to spell the letter Hey. So if we spell the letter Hey as Hey Yud, then it equals, Ekyeh equals 161. Ekyeh equals 161. How is that? So in expanded spelling, we look at the way the letter is written or spelled. So Aleph becomes Aleph Lamed Pei, 1 plus 30 plus 80. Hey is 5 plus 10, the Hey and the Yud. Yud is Yud Vav Daled, 10 plus 6 plus 4. And then the final Hey is Hey Yud, 10 plus 5, which equals 161. Kayin equals 160. And with the Kolel, or the wild card, they match. The Yuds in expanded spelling indicate, since we choose to expand the letter Hey to be written Hey Yud, therefore it's associated with Chachma. I'm not sure what this means, because before we said that Kayin is associated with Bina as opposed to Chachma. Hevel is with Chachma. So I don't know if this just shows that Kayin is associated with intellect in general. I don't know.
The numerical value of Cain plus the Kolel is 161, which is also the numerical value of the name Ekyeh when spelled out with the letter Yud. Cain is Kuf Yud Mem, 100 plus 10 plus 50, which is 160. And Ekyeh, I will be, reflects Hashem's will to be manifest in creation. This name is spelled Aleph Hey Yud Hey. When it's spelled out, the Heys are spelled out with the letter Yud, and we have, as we saw firstly, 161. The letter Yud is associated with Chachma, so this spelling out of the name represents the will within Chachma to be manifest in creation.
Okay, thank you. Moshe is a reincarnation of Hevel, and his father-in-law Yitro is a reincarnation of Cain. Yitro came to make amends with Moshe.
Now, Moshe is the reincarnation of Chavel, and Yisro is the reincarnation of Cain. Yisro came to Moshe in order to rectify his having killed Chavel.
The Torah says Chava gave birth to Cain and Hevel. The word es is used in each case, which has no translation. It's often used before a direct object, but not always. And sometimes it means with. And therefore, putting all this together, it can be understood on the midrashic level to indicate something additional. I'll give you an example. It says, Kabed es avicha v'esimecha, honor your father and your mother. The word es indicates something more, and that is to also honor an older brother, something additional. The Gemara asks, so what about es Hashem Elokecha tira? You should fear Hashem. What additional thing are you gonna add to fearing Hashem? In this case, over here, our rabbis learn. So it says that a Chava gave birth to es Cain and es Hevel. It can be understood here. Our rabbis learned that there was a twin born with Cain and Hevel. However, in Hevel's case, the word es is written twice. And it says es achiv es Hevel. His brother Hevel, and before his brother and Hevel, it adds the word es. Therefore, they learned that there were two girls born with Cain. Cain and Hevel married their twin sisters.
Two girls born with Hevel.
I'm sorry, what?
Two girls were born with Hevel, not Cain.
Okay.
You said
It's fine.
What you've written is correct.
You're saying I misread it?
You
Correct.
misread it. You said
Let me say it again.
What you've written is right.
Okay, so I'll read it again. In Hevel's case, the word es is written twice. Therefore, they learn two girls born with Hevel.
Right.
Cain and Hevel married their twin sisters. It says Mashiach will come at a time of Hesach Hadas, when we're not focused, when our mind's not focused. So that was a period of Hesach Hadas. Mashiach should come. Cain and Hevel married their twin sisters. Cain, as the firstborn, claimed Hevel's second twin for himself. Any questions?
Nope.
I think they say that someone said yes. Hevel was one of triplets. I think someone said there's always a woman involved, and that is what we have here. Okay, Jim, are you ready?
I am.
Okay, middle of 372. Our sages teach.
Our sages teach us that Cain killed Abel in order to take the extra twin sister that was born with him. This extra twin is alluded to the fact that in the verse describing the birth of Abel, and she gave birth as well to his brother, et achiv, Abel, et Chavel. The direct object et appears twice. Well, in the verse describing the birth of Cain, she gave birth to Cain, et Cain. It appears only once, implying he was born with only one twin sister. Although Hebrew grammar technically requires a direct object be preceded by the word et, which has no equivalent in English, the rule is often disregarded. Furthermore, the word et is also occasionally means with. Therefore, when it is used to identify the direct object, it is often taken to allude to some additional entity implied together with the direct object. In this case, it implies that a twin sister was born with each of the two brothers. And since it appears twice in the verse describing the birth of Abel, we infer that the two sisters were born together with him. The fact that these twins were sisters may be indicated by the fact that the word et can also be read at, the feminine form of the pronoun you. These girls became the wives of Cain and Abel.
Thanks. And this was the source of the disagreement between Cain and Hevel and the jealousy. Cain claimed that Hevel's second twin belonged to him as firstborn. You know, the firstborn by Torah law gets a double share of property.
Oh, interesting.
Firstborn gets a double share of property. So for example, if there are 4 sons, they divide everything 5 ways. The 3 younger sons take 1 share, the oldest takes 2 shares. So he claimed for himself. As we said, Cain is from Yesod of Ima. Now we're going to speak about the Kabbalistic structure. Look at this in a Kabbalistic way. Cain is from Yesod of Ima within Zerampin. This level shines into Malchus of Ima, the feminine principle. Ima is Bina, so we're talking within intellect. Yesod is number 9, Malchus number 10. Yesod is part of the male Ze'er Anpin, and Malchus is the feminine principle, which comes from behind Yesod of Ima. This is called Leah. Since it is from Ima, it is the sister of Cain. Cain, before we said, is associated with Ima and Bina. So this level, it shines from Yesod into Malchus, is the twin, the sister of Cain. Go ahead, Jim.
The mystical meaning of these twins is as follows. The Yesod of Ima within Zer Anpin shines into the Malchus of Ima. Malchus of Ima emerges behind Yesod of Ima, and it is called Leah. This is the twin sister of Cain, who, as we said, also issues from the Yesod of Ima.
Okay. Similarly, Hevel is from Yesod of Abba within Zerampin. This level shines into Malchus of Abba and comes from behind Yesod of Abba. But this light, Malchus of Abba, strikes Yesod of Ima, and a second twin is formed. So we know that within Abba, within Ima, Yesod is the male part of the emotions, shines into Malchus, the female part. But by the same token, if you look at intellect as a whole, Chachma shines into Bina. So I guess this is what it means. So Yesod of Abba, which is personified by Hevel, not only shines into Malchus, but also it says it strikes Ima as well, specifically Yesod of Ima. And therefore, a second twin is formed. Although this is Hevel's second twin, it is at Yesod of Ima, the domain of Cain.
Mhm.
In other words, this second female twin was produced by Malchus of Abba, the domain of Hevel, but is formed in Yesod of Ima, domain of Cain. This is why Cain claimed her for himself and killed Hevel. Now, Yitro brought her to Moshe to concede that she truly belonged to Hevel or Moshe. And I think I mentioned last week that when Moshe killed the Egyptian, so the Medrash says that this Egyptian, that this Egyptian had been attracted to one of the Jewish women slaves, and he gave some kind of busy work to the husband to get him out of the house at night. The Egyptian went in, pretending to be the husband, and had relations with the Jewish slave's wife. And the Jewish slave came home. He understood, he suspected, and that's why the next day the Egyptian was beating him because dead men can't talk. Dead men tell no tales. Thank you. So that was, in a sense, that was the nefesh of Cain that was again claiming the twin or the woman for himself. The third one was, the second is Yitro that we're learning about now, and the neshama of Cain entered Korach, and in Korach was there a woman that he was fighting over with Moshe? I'm not sure. There were some things there, but I'm not sure if it's related to this. But he revolted against Moshe. So at least in two of them, we clearly see where the woman is involved.
I wonder if it's echoed in the snake and the serpent wanting Chava when she was not his to take.
Could be. I haven't seen anything about that, but that is a good point. Thank you. Okay, so I just read this. Yes. So Jim, go ahead. Page 373, a twin of Yesod.
The twin of Yesod of Abba similarly issues from the light of Malchus of Abba and is situated behind the Yesod of Abba. A second twin is formed when the light of Malchus of Abba strikes the Yesod of Ima, but is situated behind the Yesod of Ima. These are the two twin sisters of Abel, who is derived from the Yesod of Abba. Thus, whereas Ima's Malchus produces one twin of its Yesod, Abba's Malchus produces two twins on its Yesod. But since the second twin produced by Malchus of Abba is produced when its lights hit that of the Yesod of Ima, this second twin takes its place not behind the Yesod of Abba, where it belongs, but behind this Yesod of Ima, where it was created.
Okay, I'm going to interrupt for a moment. So as I said, it was produced by Abba, but formed in Ima. And that's what we just said. Next paragraph, not my kind of thing. So if you read it, anyone want to have comments? The floor is open.
Yes, read it psychologically.
Yeah, please read.
This presumably means Chachma realizes that it must actualize itself as itself, and also as the presence of Chachma within Bina. As we've explained previously, Bina must always carry something of the presence of Chachma within it, or else intellectual development it carries out on the initial insight of Chachma is apt to go too far afield from the meaning of the initial insight. In contrast to this, Bina needs only one self-actualization.
Okay, if anyone wants to comment, I think basically we've spoken before what I think it means. We've talked a number of times that Chachma is that initial inspiration of the concept, and the development of the concept happens in Bina. In order for Chachma to take place, there has to be what they call in the title self-abnegation, what I call a lack of sense itself. You have to put your sense of self aside, or in the language of the Hasidus, you have to have bittul. So Bina has to keep some of that. Bina, when it's developed, still has to have that bittul from chachma. It can't lose that idea of, in one way, I think you could describe it as putting aside your own agenda. Especially, for example, I always think about a research laboratory, other kinds of research. And unfortunately, you do see occasionally, sometimes, maybe too often, where people are pursuing a line of research or a line of reasoning that they don't want to let go, even when the signs might point objectively. They might realize that this is not working, but they won't want to let it go because of their ego. So in this sense, you have to have this bittul, a lack of sense of self or humility that is a characteristic of chachma, so that you can stop doubling down and back out with grace. I think that's what it means.
Tell me if you think this fits. I think of a man before he's married, when his whole life is Torah, and then he gets married and suddenly his life is all this materiality. So it's almost a complete shift in who he is and a tremendous descent. So the idea of being actualized in his first self and then being actualized in his second self. But for the woman, she's been thinking about all this materiality since she was a little girl playing with dolls and making families and taking care of babies. Does it fit?
You're probably a better expert on that than I am. I would say that. Oh, I forgot what I had a really good comeback. I can't remember. It could be Abigail.
Because to go from being a yeshiva student where your whole life is Torah, and then they tell you you're supposed to get married, and your whole life becomes materiality, that is tremendous.
Well, in that, yes, it's similar to how the Jewish people went from the desert into the land of Israel, where they were in a small area geographically, and they didn't have to, plant, plow, make food or anything like that. They didn't have to work land, and they spent their time studying Torah, and then suddenly they're in the land of Israel, and now they have to work like an honest living.
But then you think about the girls, little girls, my kids, my daughter had a little girl and they were all of this liberal, like we're not going to impose gender on her in any way. But all that Winnie cares about is playing with dolls and everything feminine and pink, purple, or pale blue. I like everything is feminine. It just came out of her. It's just who she is.
Naturally was drawn to it.
Yes. And so, girls grow up thinking about when they're married and have a family and are moms. That's not a second identity they take on. That's the way we're born. That's what we think real life is. So we don't have this double first start as, like I think about a bochor and, like his whole life is what it is. And then
it is a big shift.
I could see that there's a shift for Chachma, but not so much. Chachma's coming out of Ayin, right? But not so much for Bina.
So which role of the man takes more humility and bittul? When you're sitting studying Torah in the yeshiva, and like you said, you're in the realm of chachma, or when you get married, and
it's two different kinds of bittul, right?
More, and you have a wife. Which one takes more?
It's the
bittul?
second one. The second one, because then it's not just theoretical, right? Then it's the real thing. Like I know someone who's so upset. She's got 6 kids and she's so upset that her husband goes to daven mincha just when it's dinner and bath time for 6 children. And she's just like upset. And I can't say a single thing to her because I know both of them. But it's just, he's got 2 identities and she doesn't. So okay. Of course the to be bittul to Torah versus bittul to a mitzvah, right?
Okay. All right.
You have to bring it down from just in your head to actually in your action. So that's
Okay.
harder. That's
Wonderful. Good insight. Thanks.
Abigail's insight, right?
Yeah. Okay. I like that. Um,
Do you think that's more bittle? When
I
you
don't know.
left-
I was kind of joking when I said
Oh,
which one was
yeah?
more
You
bittle.
don't want to answer because you
Huh?
went through it. You're a young yeshiva student,
Yes.
and then you got married.
Well, being married was a learning process, and
Yeah.
yes, took a while.
No answer on the record.
Yeah, it's all being recorded. So
Yes.
my wife, no.
Baruch Hashem.
But there are some people who balance both and are able to realize that you may have an obligation to go to shul do that, but you also have an obligation to your family. So you have to look at what takes precedent, and you can balance them both out. And they are people who do balance them both out with the same degree.
Yes.
Here's my response, Abigail.
Okay.
My wife makes it easy for me.
Yes, that's good. Baruch Hashem.
Okay.
Wonderful wife.
Okay, thanks.
Thank God.
All right, Gershon, page
Yeah.
373 in the middle. Now,
Middle.
Cain.
Now Cain felt that the second twin, who was produced when the light of Abba struck the light of Ima, should be his. For the Yesod of Abba produced her by means of the Yesod of Ima, even if she was in essence derived from the light of Abba. Cain therefore rose up against Abel and killed him. Jethro, reincarnation of Cain, came to rectify this error. Bina, whose task is to develop the flash of insight that is Chokhmah into a full-fledged intellectual development, must evince a measure of self-orientation, or what becomes, in later contexts, ego, in order to do its job. In contrast, the experience of Chokhmah is that of total self-abnegation in the face of the higher realization and insight being opened up. The danger of Bina is that it may take its selfhood too far and appropriate not only its own intellectual development, but the presence of Chokhmah within it as well. The consequences of these, as we have noted, can be dire. The whole initial insight of the message of Chokhmah can be lost in the overblown, out-of-control development of Bina. This evidently is what happened with Cain. His distorted logic convinced him that the proper thing to do was to eliminate Abel for the good of humanity. The godly message the world's second generation was entrusted with, and to which Cain thought he was being loyal, got lost in his unchecked reasoning.
Okay, thanks. So Tzipporah, Yisro's daughter and Moshe's wife, personified the second twin of Hevel. She was formed in Yesod of Ima, originated in Malchus of Abba. This is why she now was born to Yisro, the reincarnation of Cain. Go ahead, Gershon.
Now Moshe's wife, Zipporah, personified the second twin, who was positioned behind the Yesod of Ima. She was therefore born to Jethro, for she issued from the light of Abba that struck the Yesod of Ima, and Jethro, who was the reincarnation of Cain, issued from the Yesod of Ima.
So the Torah says Yisro took Tzipporah, Moshe's wife, after he sent her back to
Yitro.
Midian.
Midian.
Yeah, and Yisro. He sent her refers to Malchus of Ab, the domain of Hevel, sending the light to Yesod of Ima, the domain of Cain. Cain had a rightful claim to her. Still, Yisro acknowledged that she rightfully belonged to Moshe and Hevel. Okay, go ahead, Gershon.
He therefore brought her to Moshe, who was the reincarnation of Abel, in order to demonstrate that she was rightfully Moshe, and thereby rectify that which he ruined the first time. This is the mystical meaning of the verse. And Jethro took Zipporah, Moshe's wife, after he had sent her back to him. After Moses, who is Abel, that means the Yesod of Abba, sent this light to the Yesod of Ima. It was therefore properly Cain's and not Abel's, since it had been sent Yesod to the Yesod of Ima, But Jethro nonetheless brought her back to Moshe.
Okay, thanks. 11. The Torah says, and her two sons, not Moshe's sons. The two sons were from Yesod of Ima, not Yesod of Abba. Generally, children are born to Ima or Bina. The Midos, that's Zerampin, and Malchus are born from Bina, or the union of Chachma Bina. Where's this? One moment. 12. The name of the first son was Gershom, with a value of 544. This is the same as the name Ekyeh that we had before, Aleph Hey Yud Hey, in expanded spelling in regressive iteration. So if you remember, expanded spelling we know means you take the letter Aleph, you write Aleph, Aleph Lamed Pei, and that's 111. Regressive iteration means you take the first letter, then the first two letters, then the first three letters, and then all four letters, which means that the first letter gets counted 4 times, the second letter 3 times, the third letter twice, and the fourth letter once. In regular gematria, the 4 Alephs would be a total of 4 times 1. But in expanded spelling, Aleph is 111. So 4 of them would be 444. So Aleph would be 111 times 4, plus Hey, which is 15 times 3, plus Yud, which is 20 times 2, and plus Hey, which is 15 times 1, which is 444, plus 45, plus 40, plus 15 is 544. How's that? Okay. Abigail, 374 in the middle. And it says when Jethro mentioned, it's the Torah mentions it. Yitro, I don't know if he says it. I have to double check to see how it's written. But go ahead.
When Jethro mentioned their two sons, he called them her sons and not Moshe's sons, because both of them were derived from the Yesod of Ima and not from the Yesod of Abba. The first one was named Gershom, the numerical value of which, with the Kolel, is 544. The value of the posterior of the name Ekyeh when spelled out with the letter Yud. So Gershom is Gimel Resh Shin Mem. 3 plus 200 plus 300 plus 40 is 543. When one partsuf descends and is clothed in a lower one, it is only the external or lower aspect of the first partsuf that enters the second. This is simply because the second partsuf, being a lower level of consciousness, cannot sustain the higher level of consciousness operative at the higher intrinsic level of the first partsuf. All it can accept and assimilate is the part of the higher partsuf that is already oriented and aimed at being manifest on the lower level. This lower external aspect of the higher partsuf is called its back or posterior. The way a divine name is associated with a partsuf is manipulated in order to produce this posterior manifestation. Is considering first its first letter and then its first 2 letters, then its first 3, and so on until all the letters of the name have been iterated. The value of all these iterations are then summed. In this way, the number produced represents the gradual issuance of that name on its way down into the lower partsuf. In our case, the posterior of Ekyeh, the name associated with Ima, is as follows: Aleph, Aleph Hey, Aleph Hey Yud, Aleph Hey Yud Hey. When these letters are spelled out, with the letter Yud used to spell out the Heys as above, we have, and there's this great big chart that, do you want me to read this chart?
Read the left column down.
Okay. So Aleph goes to Aleph Lamed Pei, and Aleph goes to Aleph Lamed Pei again. And then Hey goes to Yud Hey Aleph. And then Hey going downward, Aleph Hey Yud, Aleph Hey Yud Hey.
And now read the right column down.
111 to 111. Hey is 15. 111. Hey is 15 again, sorry, 20, 111, 15, 20, 15, and you get 544.
Okay, good, thanks. The name
This
of the
is-
second,
Oh, how-
son was
She's
Eliezer.
got, she's got one other thing to say.
One more line, Abigail, thank you.
This numerical equivalence thus demonstrates that Gershom is solidly related to Ema and not Abba.
So I don't understand. I guess that Ekia is, maybe the name Ekia is connected with Bina. It said before on 372 at the top that Ekia reflects Hashem's will to be manifest in creation. And then it said the letter Yud associated, this expanded spelling of this name represents the will within Chachma to be manifest in creation. Here we're saying this numerical equivalence demonstrates that Gershom is related to Ima and not Abba. I don't understand the connection between Ekia and Ima.
It's
may
the
have to
posterior,
cross
it's the
it.
posterior,
The
it's the
lowest level.
posterior of Vecchia.
It's the lowest section that's
It's the
able. to
posterior of Vecchia, which is associated with Bina.
connect. It's three lines up from the bottom of 374 if you don't see it.
Right.
Okay,
So it's that section that's able to connect,
all
that's
right,
able to be absorbed. I
all right,
don't,
thanks. And we might, hopefully we'll see, this might be, we might see more of it at another time. I'm hoping to. But thank you for pointing that out.
sorry.
Now, the name of the second son was Eliezer, which equals 318. The second letter of Havaya is Hey and corresponds to Bina. The second letter also corresponds to Havaya when the Yud is expanded to be spelled with Hey. Nope, sorry. When the letter Hey is expanded to be spelled with Hey, which equals, then the expanded spelling of Havaya equals 63. Remember, we have 72, 63, 45, and 52. So the second one is 63, which corresponds to the second letter of Yud Kei Vav Kei, of Havaya. 5 Hey, 5, which is Hey, times 63 is 315. Add 5 for the Hey, and we have 320. 320 is the number of judgments in Bina. I do not know more about this. Something tells me we've had it before, the 320, but I don't remember what it is. Alan says also he thinks we had it. Two upper roots of these 320 sweeten all 320 or the other 318 states of judgments. And therefore, those two are not included in the states of judgment, leaving 318 the same as Eliezer. So in other words, Eliezer is 18, and Havaya is 63 times 5. We're going to plus 5 gives us 320 minus 2, 318. Same as Eliezer. It refers to the, let's say it differently. Those 318 are the judgments, not including the sweet ones, but the judgments within Bina. And that matches Eliezer. Okay, go ahead, Abigail, similarly.
Similarly, the numerical value of Eliezer is 318, for Ema is associated with the first Hey of the name Havaya, which is in turn associated with the name Havaya as it is spelled out such that its numerical value is 63, as is known. 5 times 63 equals 315, and the numerical value of the Hey itself is 5, giving a total of 320. These are the 320 states of judgment in Bina. In our case, these were lacking their 2 upper roots, which sweeten all 320 states of judgment, so that all that were manifest were 318, the numerical value of Eliezer. Eliezer is Aleph, Lamed, Yud, Ayin, Zayin, Resh, 1/3 plus 30 plus 10 plus 70 plus 7 plus 200 equals 318. The name Havaya can be spelled out in various ways depending on whether we use a Yud, a Hey, or an Aleph to spell out the Hays and Vavs. Of all these possibilities, there are 4 that are actually used. Those whose sums are 72, 63, 45, and 52. These 4 spellings out of the name Havaya are then themselves associated with the 4 letters of the name. In this scheme, the spelling out, whose numerical value is 63, is associated with the first Hay of the name Havaya. We have also noted previously that the 4 letters of the name Havaya are associated with the 4 principal parsufim, Abba, Ima, Zeranpin, and Nukva. Thus, the first Hay in the spelling out, whose numerical value is 63, are both expressions of Bina. Since the numerical value of Hay is 5, the full manifestation of Bina is 5 times 63, or 315. The value of the Hay itself is added to this number, akin to a kollel, i.e. to include the general overall consciousness of the letter together with its iteration via the name associated with it. This gives us 320. This number is significant as the number of states of judgment within Bina. As we know, Bina must evince the property of judgment as it methodologically constructs a complete worldview out of the seminal light of Chokmah, as the latter impinges on the intellect's previous worldview. Every detail of the previous worldview is evaluated in light of the new insight and modified, accepted, or rejected, depending on how it measures up to the new truth that has been attained. This is the process of judgment. Presumably, the 2 upper roots that were lacking in Eliezer were Yesod and Malchus of Abba, which were disconnected from the second twin of Abel when Cain appropriated her. By sending Eliezer together with Zipporah and Gershom back to Moshe, Jethro was filling in these elements missing from the proper manifestation of Ima. That was a lot.
I think it boils down to a few basic points.
Okay.
It didn't bring in a lot of different things. It stuck to one idea or very few ideas. They're closely connected. Jim, if you need to go, so we just finished. But if anyone has a question or a comment.
It seemed like, just briefly, it seemed like a reiteration of last time in a different way of expressing it.
Yeah. Actually, I'll tell you a secret. I left number 1 of the notes. I didn't touch it. I left it exactly as it was last week.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. All right. Good night. Thank you.
Okay, great. Take care, everybody. Any other comments? Good night, Jim. Oh, okay. Oh, let me stop share at least so we can see you guys.
We must digest.
It's interesting that he's filling in the elements missing in Ima.
Filling in what?
It's interesting that when Yitro brought Moshe's wife and Gershom back, that he's filling in the missing elements from the proper manifestation of Ima.
It says that it's presumably.
Yeah.
So that is Rabbi Wisniewski's connection. It's not explicit in the Arizal.
But he waits until after they've crossed the sea, right? He says it's not an appropriate time to have them there until after you cross. And then
Well, they only cross a few days later.
And when they cross, it's time to finish Ima and move on to maybe a new drawing down to a lower level as they get closer. That's the best I can do with this.
Okay. Okay, good. It's very important that we process it, digest it, and our own context.
Definitely all of this is going to take me a couple of times. You know,
I hope the